Harsh, are you recording? Yes, please start the recording so that we can proceed with. Oh, okay, great. Leader of opposition, here.
Great. Just give me a couple seconds. Until then, I'll ask for a PO at 5 minutes. Please do not unmute yourself until then. Um, oh, okay. Starting my speech in three, two, one. Well, two things Gov has done wrong here. First, they've tried to create Bronny James as a relatively average bet, which is not the best case scenario. But second, they've also tried to paint the incentives of LeBron James in itself in such a manner that, LeBron James will be that big of a contribution towards the team and towards other players as well. All these things will be taken down in my speech. But before that, let's just understand what a burden at op is here. Obviously an active motion. So as long as we prove to you that not only the team's general manager, but the team as a whole will get fucked in the long term, and that the short-term benefits that Gov is trying to paint here are not as good or not even worth it to take a chance on Bronny James in the first place, we will take this debate. With that, with that, let's just understand what what this general manager's responsibility is, right? So Gov tries to paint it as legacy and legacy and getting number of wins. But note that it just doesn't end there. It's not that shallow, right? As a team's general manager, you want to keep your job for as long as possible. The way you do that is by building a team that not just gets wins, quote unquote, but also goes ahead and has a good enough chemistry wherein the people can support the whole team as a whole instead of fixing their focus on one or two players, right? And what that then means is that the actual incentive of this coach here, of the general manager here, is to go ahead and draft players that actually go ahead and gel well together, so that in this specific season and in the further seasons to come, they are more likely to go ahead and work together and have that chemistry with each other to the point where they go ahead and support each other, they work well with each other, they play well with each other, right? And the way to do that is not by going ahead and hiring this wild card or making these wild card bets, etc., etc. Right? The way to do that is by going ahead and actually thinking about the players that you choose and the actual team that you build. Now, I agree with government's characterization on who gets to pick first and all those things. But then let's just compare what what LeBron Jr. is in comparison to other players that also might be available on this team, right? Note that this junior has had a cardiac arrest while in college. His college season was fucked. It wasn't average, panel note. It was fucked. And then the statistics, the best case scenario at Curve is that the statistics and the overall game that this person has are average at best. The actual ceiling that this person has is of mediocrity. But then also note that how his physical build is nowhere compared to that of his dad. But then also note that at a point wherein this person is playing in the same league as his dad, which also happens on Gov, the overall comparison that happens also then exemplifies and also then becomes worse off on their paradigm, wherein there are people who wherein every game that this person fucks up, or or every shot that he misses, or every pass that he doesn't get, all these things, or every time he's freaking bench, all these decisions that are related with this person will be then exemplified to that large of an extent when they compare it to his father, who is literally playing in the same team or playing as the same team together, right? So all these decisions just go ahead and pile up onto this player into an even larger extent. But then note how, as a general manager, there are relatively better bets that you can take. Sure, there might be not some person who can change the fucking league for this team, etc., etc. But you can actually have good players who have relatively better statistics, who have a relatively better belt, who have relatively better height than this person, who have relatively better span of their freaking arms, who have better stamina, who can play more games, who can push themselves to a further extent than this junior, right? So at a point wherein there are relatively better bets available, and note how they already characterize this, they are picking first, so they have a chance to pick these better players. They have a chance to pick to make better bets, to make better decisions towards their team. At a point wherein this general manager has these chance, I believe they should go ahead with other instead of going ahead and taking this wild card, right? But then also note how LeBron James himself has to some extent fallen off. The simple reason is he's fucking 40 years old. Age catches up. He has missed the most game in the last season. The very simple reason is because he doesn't want to get hurt, and he just can't keep up, right? So sure, other players don't play much, but LeBron James plays even less. So if you draw his son, it is likely that both of them would be able to contribute towards the team as a whole that much. And one of the biggest reason for that is the very reason that James Sr. has gone ahead and say that, oh, I'll go towards this team, is the only reason being that his son goes ahead and plays for it, which means his focus won't actually be towards, oh, team winning, etc., etc. It will be towards teaching his son, or going ahead and spending time with his son, or completing his dream of, oh, I go ahead and play with his son. He won't give less of fuck about whether the team wins or not. But even if, let's say, on the best case scenario, that this person then goes ahead, note that LeBron James has 1 or 2 years at the best, which means that whatever then happens after this, whatever then happens after LeBron James leaves, it will be nothing but a huge vacuum that no one will be able to fill, not even his freaking son himself. At that point, and yeah, sure, go ahead.
LeBron James is effectively close to retirement. At that point, then he wants to go out with the bang. Why do you think he would risk himself to be in a bad team and not work for the team's betterment just because, oh, he wants to
You
spend time
said
with
a
his
bad
son?
team is going to go ahead and pick this freaking player. He is going to go to a bad team. It's your own characterization. Then moving on to the teams who will, yeah. So yeah, then destroying their whole point of PR, and how that will add to legacy, etc., etc., and how people will buy this thing. Well, first of all, note that this PR won't just exist in terms of them selling off merch, etc., etc., but it will also go ahead and pile up on the team's overall mental health and their overall exhaustion, and all these things, and all their chemistry as well. Because when you have this attention grabbing players in your team, what then happens is the overall scrutiny, the overall camera people on your team and your members and your face then also increases, which means they're looking at your training sessions, they're looking at, like how the other players are going ahead and behaving around this big freaking legend 24/7. There are different gossips going around, and all these things are bound to pile up over their own teammates, right? Which means that the overall exhaustion that they're already going through, because now they don't just have to have a good season, but they also have this extra amount of camera people, and all this PR and all these things being said about them, and how they are necessarily going ahead and playing their games, etc., etc. And note that sure, it exists on status quo as well, but in this case it is getting even worse, because now you have this big player who is going ahead and playing for you, and you have this extra layer of
Yeah, we're about to start with another speech, so you can restart the timer.
Am I audible?
Yep, you're audible.
Okay. I will be starting in three, two, one. First thing I want to point out before I move on to any sort of reputations is that we do not see a substantive at their side of the house. It's an opposition first speaks. I would recommend them to bring some sort of like positive impacts if they want to kind of win this debate. But that being said, I think there were some integrated ideas which I will take down one by one. First thing that they talked about was that the manager wants to keep his job, and that he wants, like, he wants to win, and that chemistry is needed, right? And that people should support the team for the team and not for the player, right? Stuff like that. First thing, I think the longevity of a manager's job, or how likely he is to keep that job, is based, number one, on the performance of the team, i.e., how many matches you win, how many trophies you win, how the statistics look, and secondly, on how much money you can generate or how much entertaining you can be to people, and whether that increases the kind of like turnout for your fans within the stadium and stuff like that as well. I think that matters much more insofar as that happens at our side of the house. I think the manager's burden is fulfilled. Secondary, I think chemistry exists at our side of the house as well, because I think that LeBron James is like literally the best player in the NBA right now. I don't know why the chemistry would go off because of LeBron James. But also, secondly, we characterize Bronny James as a character for you as well. Like, even if he does not have the individual statistics of maybe hitting the most hoops or whatever, I don't know how basketball works, but he still is an excellent team player to begin with as well. He's someone who can kind of contribute to the team, even if he cannot carry them to wins, even if he's not LeBron James himself. I think that still exists. Chemistry still exists. I think chemistry is also something that can be effectively coached into players as well. You don't purchase players or you don't draft players immediately thinking, oh, this player will just slot right into the team. You understand the fact that you're buying someone new who's played in different circumstances and different teams throughout their life. He will probably have to be trained and coached, by the way, the best coaches in the world in order to be drafted or to be integrated within that team. I don't know why that necessarily is a bad thing to begin with. Second thing, the idea was that Bronny had a terrible college career and he will also be compared to his dad, yada, yada, yada. I think number one, the one thing that I want to talk about here is that he will not necessarily be compared to his dad. Sure, there will be some comparisons in the beginning. Oh my God, LeBron James' son is like not that good, not as good as him. But I think that individuals in the sporting world do have adjusted expectations, in the sense that, number one, LeBron is literally the best player in the world. You cannot expect his son to outdo the father immediately. It is not a reasonable expectation for you to have. I think a lot of media outlets, I think a lot of fans kind of understand that. Or also, secondly, when he's going to be drafted, people are going to understand that, hey, Bronny James was probably not that good in college, and for all the reasons that side opposition give you as well, he's probably not going to be that good. He's just going to be decent. We're just going to watch him because guess what, he's going to play with his fucking father, who's the goat of the sport. I think that necessarily is going to happen as well. But I think even at our worst case, he's absolutely terrible. I think there are a couple of things. Number one, I think very regularly, even phenoms are players who have immense potential, who you draft from college or from European leagues because you're like, oh my God, this player is absolutely going to tear the league apart and is going to win us the goddamn NBA. I think even those players very often get injured or busted and turn out to be shit, either because they cannot put up to the pressure, either because they cannot adjust to the tactics, either because they get worn out and burnt out or injured, and stuff like that very regularly happens. This is not an uncommon occurrence. I don't think that this is like some one-time investment and you only get this one chance and you make this investment bad and then everything is going to go to shit. That's not really how sports work. But also, secondly, I want to posit to you that these are rookie contracts, i.e., even if Bronny James is shit, I think after 1 year of him and LeBron James playing together and LeBron James retiring, you can just dispose of Bronny James as well. You're not stuck with him for the rest of your life as well. I think then for the 1 or 2 seasons that you're going to have the best player in your team and maybe an average player in your team, I don't really think that that's really a bad trade-off to begin with, right? But then this idea that, oh my God, there are better players out there, right? And that they have better stats and stuff like that. And this is where I kind of want to very clearly emphasize upon you that this comparative is not Bronny versus other better players. The comparative is Bronny James and LeBron James, i.e. the best player in the NBA, versus some college kids who have shown some potential, which we, by the way, characterize for you that there are currently no college phenoms, i.e. no breaking players who are like gonna absolutely tear the league apart. There's like above average players at best. That is the comparative panel. I think on that comparative, then I would rather take a guaranteed success in the form of LeBron's plus an average player as compared to some players with some sort of basic level of potential to begin with. But we also characterize for you that your draft is probably not going to be super successful to begin with at your side of the house as well. And they kind of like they very explicitly accept this characterization because A, NBA pressure is high, B, players get injured, C, you don't have a lot of good players within the status quo in this collegiate football as well, and D, another evolution upon Marzia's case, NBA is unique in its rules and tactics as well. The NBA basketball rules and the European basketball rules are different. Similarly, NBA tactics and the way that the game is played is extremely different as compared to how the college game is played and how the European game is played. At that one time, many players are like just don't adjust into these tactics because they're just constructed in extremely different circumstances and are not likely to succeed as well. Point I'm trying to make is that the likelihood of success at side opposition is very, very low already. I would rather take an average player and a guaranteed success in the form of LeBron James than nothing at all. But then this idea that LeBron has fallen off. First of all, okay, he is old, but he's still a top player. Statistically speaking, he was still one of the top performers, if not the top performer in the NBA last year. Just because he's old does not mean he's shit. I'm sorry. Thiago Silva, Chelsea's main defender, literally won the Champions League, the best award in the footballing world at the age of
POI.
8, when most players retire at 32. Point I'm trying to make is that age is not that, like, does not have a direct relationship with how good your player is. But also, secondly, I think even if he's not that good, I think the idea of him having a mentorship role and like a wisdom role within the team where he can train younger players and kind of give advice to them really, really matters as well. That being said, I'll take a POI.
Is having LeBron James a single most guaranteed to your team success?
LeBron James, I mean, obviously, if LeBron James is in your team, the likelihood of him contributing to your team to succeeding is very, very high. We already posited that he's just objectively a very good player to begin with. But also, secondly, even if he is not performing at the top level, I think LeBron James falling off versus an average player falling off means different things. An average player falling off means he becomes shit. LeBron James falling off means he's still above average, if not better than almost like 90% of the players in the league to begin with as well. But even if he's not the best, even if he's significantly fallen off, I think having someone as experienced and someone with the level of understanding of the game that he has, the intricacies and the mechanics of the games that he knows, him being a mentor and him having that wisdom role within the team is going to be very, very good to begin with. But this idea that, oh my god, teams have extra PR and press and there's more pressure during the goddamn NBA, obviously scrutiny exists. Obviously you are going to be asked questions either way. I think you're going to play with great players throughout your life. Having LeBron James, or in 10 years time having some other player in your team, is eventually going to result in this. I think at that point in time, then these teams should not sign good players at all, because guess fucking what, there's going to be some sort of scrutiny over them. But also, secondly, these players I think are very often trained in media training and stuff like that as well. I don't know why that doesn't happen. There's literally like no positive at their side of the house. I think we take this debate on all impacts. Both side, gov.
Thank the speaker for the fine speech. Dear Roshir.
Yep, 30 seconds, please. Cool. POI is exclusively through chat. Please don't raise your hand. Please don't unmute. I will try to take one after 5:30. No guarantees. So, cool. All that being said, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Few things to clarify, right? One, government does not have any sense of like future trade-offs that they necessarily need to make, especially since this is a general manager of an NBA team. That means that you have to think about the team's future, especially if you want to keep your job, right? And I think that's pretty much in the incentive of the general manager, which makes it like an immediate necessity as an incentive, right? To have like to ensure the team's growth and to ensure that the team does well in the future as well. Notice that that's never going to happen on government side, and I'm going to prove to you how that doesn't happen, right? First, a few rebuttals, explicit rebuttals, right? One, on this idea of mentorship role and how exactly this is going to happen, right? One, I'm unsure as to why that's going to happen, because the incentive for LeBron James to even come to this team is to help his son, right? Which means that he's most likely, even if he's going to mentor someone, going to mentor his son and pay most attention to his son, right? Which means that the time period, which means that it's probably going to be worse off, because now these other team members are going to feel slighted because they notice that he's only paying attention to his son and he doesn't really care, right? I'm going to bring bring that in terms of team chemistry and the impacts of that later on. But two, in terms of this idea itself, the time period also is less because like you have only 1 or 2 years, which means like any sort of expertise or like attention that he has is not going to be immediate, especially since you yourself mentioned that it's going to be a rookie contract, so you don't know if Bronny is going to stay anyway, which means LeBron's also is not going to stay, right? Which means that this idea of mentorship itself is so like marginal that I'm unsure as to why that's going to happen to begin with, right? To a counter to op on this idea of like there are no better players available in the draft, right? Yeah, you might not have like objectively best guaranteed short A1 prospects this time, like Victor, I don't know what the surname is, but idea is that the general managers pick on a comparative. Yes, it's probably not guaranteed that you will strike the right pick, but your job is to identify parameters and maximize the likelihood of drafting a player that is good, right? So Gov's counter can't be that because you don't have a guarantee, so you can go ahead and draft anyone, right? Bronny is far shorter in height, has like a height disadvantage. He's 6'1" compared to the 6'10" that his dad is, and height is a very necessary advantage in basketball, right? And Bronny also has a history of cardiac issue, right? Which means that he did not have a college season. So I'm unsure as to when you have all these metrics indicating that it does not. When you have all these metrics indicating against this pick, why you will necessarily like choose to prioritize this player because of the likelihood that they would turn out good is far greater, right? And you have other players is the counterfactual who have greater propensity to being good, right? Because that's how, as a general manager, you take a decision because you want to maximize your potential of getting a good player and not like not just say fuck it because you can't guarantee, right? Which means that basically means that our counterfactual is that you can get an alternative better player, and we're unsure as to why exactly this narrative exists on their side, right? So three, coming to this idea of PR and how exactly you're going to get attention, right? Notice that government's idea is that, oh, I'm going to be reliant on LeBron James and this family like father son duo to necessarily like have this, right? One, I'm unsure as to how exactly this is going to be sustainable in the long term, right? Notice that money is going to go out as soon as it comes because LeBron James, by their own characterization, has a maximum of 1 year or 2 years, right? Which means that it's unlikely like that any of these PR contacts or anything like that is likely going to be long term sustainable, especially since it's reliant on LeBron James being part of the team and being contributing off the team, right? Which means that two, in terms of like unnecessary interactions as well, you probably have like any sort of slight differences causing like any slight differences in behavior causing like problems, right? Which means it doesn't become a conducive environment for creating a winning team as well, right? Because in terms of team chemistry as well, you have all of these superstars in the locker and you have like it becomes difficult for them to adjust, right? Which means that they're never going to be able to understand why exactly this person who's not motivated enough to like support your team and win for you is getting superstar treatment, right? What are the impacts of this? And this is where it becomes important to notice, right? One, the team players are probably going to get demotivated because they don't necessarily see like any sort of they don't feel valued in the team. They do not feel like as if they're being contributing enough, right? Two, this means that they're probably going to look for other teams to go into and probably like look for other avenues that they're able to explore where they're going to feel more valued, right? What is the impact of this in the long term, right? The impact of this is basically that even the contributing members of your current team are going to go fuck off into other teams, which means that you're never going to actually have a like team that is going to be sustainable in the long term, right? We think this is the worst thing that can happen to a general manager, especially since your entire incentive is to have the team going and have like to allow for a better team, right? Which means that this itself is so bad that you should like not allow it for happen, right? Two, in terms of PR as well, notice that because of the fact that one, your attention is taken away from the team's identity and the team's core values because no one gives a fuck when LeBron James is a superstar. That means that the storyline itself is going to be about playing with their son, right? Which means that the people and the fan base itself lose the connect with the team. Why is this bad? This is bad because this doesn't build a strong foundation required for the team to grow in the future, right? Which means that you're never going to have a fan base that is connected to you as a team and connected to your players and connected to like the source as a whole. It's going to be connected to they're going to be connected to LeBron James and Bronny being the family duo, right? Which means that when LeBron James eventually does leave, that means that you're going to have no supporters, right? Because none of these supporters have a connect to the team itself. Which means that this is very bad because you require these supporters to be able to channel it into revenue, right? Which means all their idea of like, oh, we're going to have attention and that's how we're going to generate revenue and money and all those kind of things is never going to actually happen because now you're never going to have supporters who connect with the team itself and have like an idea of what the team represents itself, right? Which means that itself, right? All of these factors that affect the revenue streams are unlikely to happen when LeBron James and Bronny are going to be the family duo, and this narrative does exist, right? Which means that the impact is simple, that it's just not worth it, because your duties in the short term should not come at the cost of you like alleviating all your duties in the long term. Insofar as the team itself suffers in the long term, we don't see the point of like short term as well. Now, two, coming to this idea of like why LeBron James itself is not going to do as well, or like is going to be such a contributing member. One, they're probably going to have to do load balancing because of the fact that he's 40, he does not have injuries, he's going to be more prone. It's just biology, right? Two, he doesn't have like none of his incentives for coming to this team are passion or money. His only reason is his son, right? Which means he has no emotional connect to the team. He has no urge to win for them, no like grind to do that, right? Which means he's unlikely to give his best. And in case like Gov tries to do this whole thing of like, oh, legacy matters, notice that he's 40 years, he's like second billionaire to come out of NBA. He's already won like the second most laurels. All of this means that in terms of legacy, he has no incentive to like win for his team, right? Which means that this basically means that LeBron James is not going to give his best, which means you're unlikely to win even in the short term, which means that any of their short term impacts doesn't stand. They get fucked in the long term. And we think for all those reasons, it doesn't. And like the team members who do actually contribute to your team also will probably leave your team, which means that you're never going to have like any sort of benefits from this. And that's why the incentives of the general manager get fucked on government. For all those reasons, oppose.
I thank the speaker for the fine speech. Government will speak at your turn.
Uh, Hello, can you hear and see me fine?
Yep, both.
Okay, cool. PY is in chat, please. If you don't write PY, I will assume you did not give me a PY. That is not good for either of us. Okay. Sorry, it's setting a timer on my phone as well. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. When the Cavs and the Magics played in the playoffs, this playoff series, it was the most competitive series of the first round. I.e., it was the only one that went to 7 games because of the quality of the game was so incredibly high. Despite this, the only stream through which these games were streamed was the NBA app, not the tens and hundreds of channels that the NBA is connected to, because people didn't give two shits about the Cavs versus the Magics. Even if we concede everything that side opposition says in terms of the team getting worse off, in terms of skill or in terms of team performance, we uniquely help team presence and the finances, the metrics on which the general manager is judged, and the metrics on which you connect with the team. If we win on those regards, we win this debate regardless. They don't contend those. I think we won at the beginning of my speech. Quickly then, what is the NBA manager's role? Because I don't want them to come up and skew this entire debate for you and tell you, oh, you only care about skill. Because the people that care about the skill and the team structure are the coach. If that was the debate, we would be talking from the perspective of the coach. I think the general manager's role is more all-encompassing, in that you focus on the success of the organization and you focus on the success of your finances. This is particularly important because you have seen NBA franchises struggling and shutting down because they have no money left, like the Seattle Supersonics, essentially meaning that you need finances and some sort of image or presence or people's connection with you to even have a job in the first place. I think those are the metrics on which the debate should be judged. I think in the last extraneous point on the legacy not counting, I think this is a very shallow understanding of what legacy means. Because it doesn't just mean, oh, you have the best player for 30 decades. For smaller teams, it means something as simple as getting to the play-ins, because your team performance has been struggling for so many decades. Very simple example of this, the Timberwolves got to the play-ins a couple years ago, which basically means like for debate tournaments, they broke. And they threw a party like no team had ever thrown before because this was legacy for them. I think in that regard, legacy is important. The first clash then of will the team get better in terms of skill. The first thing they come up and tell you is that Bronny James is bad. I tell you, he's not the worst. He's pretty average for NBA standards, but this is where the context gets particularly important, right? That even if he is the worst player in the world, there are two kinds of reasons for why you are not getting much better things on your side of the world. We give you two lines of responses, right? We give you one specialized knowledge, i.e., there are no good college basketball players that can currently be superstars or even very good players for your team. The closest you have is like Jared McCain, who is like a glorified TikTok superstar. You also have no European phenoms, which is something that NBA general managers generally tend to look for. And because you don't have these two things, the marginal change you get on opposition's world is not much likely. But second, we give you structural reasons for why that's not true. So even if you buy the specialized reasons, there's structuralized reasons for why you don't get much more change on opposition sides of the world that they don't contend with. We told you there is more pressure in the NBA. You are more likely to get injured in the NBA, and you have different rules in the NBA. So it's harder to get used to that play style. This is important because what this means is that any sort of player that you draft, it is heavily unlikely that they will be much better for your team. The impact that opposition has is marginal at best. But this is where we think Bronny is a lot better in terms of other players in specific capacities that sort of mitigate the idea that Bronny is a bad pick at all. One, he's used to all the pressure. He's literally been scouted and spectated since he was like 5 years old. So he's used to and understands what it's like to be under the spotlight. I think he'll play better than a lot of other people. But two, he also has been had access to trainers and playoff, like his father's like playoff ability in terms of like understanding the game, which means he is likely to be a brilliant role player in ways statistics can't tell. I.e., he can set screens and he can make plays that stuff like points, assists, and rebounds and statistics don't tell you. The point of all of this being that at the end of the debate, Bronny James, you drafting a player instead of Bronny James, if that's your comparison, you're not getting much better. But that's not the true comparison, right? You get LeBron James on our side as well. And what do they say? They say LeBron James is bad because he is old. I tell you one, this is just empirically not true. He just broke the scoring record last year, and he still records games that are like over 40 points, stuff that only like a handful of NBA players have done that year. That sort of empirically tells you he's still one of the best players ever. But even if we assume that his skill isn't the same as what it is, I tell you that he has mentorship capacity in terms of what he can teach young players about how to approach the NBA. And we've seen him do this before with players like Kyrie and players like AD and players like D Wade, right? I tell you, then when they come up and tell you that these incentives don't align in terms of mentoring and you will only mentor your son, that's bullshit. And that's bullshit for two reasons. One, his legacy. And they don't contend with this incentive that we bring you, right? That LeBron James has been playing for 21 fucking years and he wants to go out with a bang, right? The reason he should make his team better, the reason he wants to make his team better is because he will be judged if his team is not better, right? I.e., if he is supposed to be the greatest of all time, then his team should keep winning. He has an incentive to maintain that image. He has an incentive to make that team better. But two, even if you buy that, that's not how mentorship or just how basketball works, right? In order for you to have a better team and for individuals to properly shine, you need a team to be better entirely, right? That is to say, if you have one really good player, but everybody around you is sort of dog shit, you probably won't be a very good player because you're not getting the passes, you're not getting the blocks, you're not getting the rebounds you need to shine. I think exclusively when LeBron James recognizes this, even if he is selfish towards his son, he has an incentive to make the team better as a whole. But I think regardless of all this, we still have economic benefits. And just a quick ref, I would like to talk to you about the idea of adjusting these people. I tell you, basketball is a team sport and LeBron is a small forward, which means he works off assisting other players, getting the rebounds and passing them the ball, which means the way his game is structured, he needs to work with the rest of the team, right? He's probably not going to tell them to fuck off and care about his son because you have 5 players on the court and 10 players on the bench. Sorry, UPY at like 5:40, that was too late. But also people are starstruck, right? That people switch to play with this guy. I think people will adjust for him. The important thing that they don't contend is that the team image gets better and you get better economics. They tell you that this is not sustainable. You will only last for 1 to 2 years. I tell you, A, this means they concede all the short-term change, at least in terms of economic benefit, exclusively for prop. B, I tell you, this economic benefit that comes short-term helps you long-term. When you sell more jerseys and are broadcasted more, you can invest in better players and better facilities. Your team gets better. We claim that comparison as well. But also it brings attention to the team, right? Let's look at the comparative here. They say you will have disloyal fans because people are only there for son and father. What they don't contend with is that the fact that you have no fans in the first place. I would rather have disloyal fans that will become loyal than no fans at all. And I tell you they will become loyal because the attention this brings you with LeBron James connects you to the team. When you're watching all 82 games of fucking season and learning about the players around LeBron James and Bronny James, you will care about those people as well. I think at the end of the debate, there's just one thing I'd like to say. LeBron James, you are my sunshine. Please let the motion stand.
I thank the speaker for that fine speech. Opposition whip, here, here.
Hi, I hope I'm clearly audible. Just give me a minute. I'll gather my notes, set up my own timers. POI, I'll ask for it around 5:30. Okay, assuming I'm still audible. Uh, Starting my speech in three, two, one, go. This house, as an NBA team's general manager, would draft Bronny James. It's an actor motion. Our path to victory from side opposition in this debate is very simple. We have to prove to you that as a general manager, you don't have the short-term responsibilities, but you have to manage the resources as such that you get success right now with a sustainable future. Everything what Gov says is the best case scenario in the short term because they never engage with us in a paradigm where this best case scenario in short term doesn't work out. They don't engage with the long term cause, saying that, okay, probably, yeah, but you have the best case short term. I don't know how the comparison can be the worst or not with the best of Gov. But let's deal with their case in what they want to do. I am not a fan of bringing contextual knowledge in this, but I think it's critical here to tell you why the positive idea of success being so likely in Gov's paradigm with LeBron James coming into your team isn't as rosy as they paint off. Because if it was, why hasn't LeBron James' current team's LA Lakers, which he plays for right now, hasn't won a trophy since 2024? They have failed to even make the playoffs, i.e., out rounds in debate context, 2 out of the 5 times in the last 5 years. The idea is very simple. It's a team sports. It's a team of five. Yes, LeBron is probably the greatest of all time, and I am on that bandwagon, and he can push the limits. But ultimately, in a team game, if the collective five is better than this one individual, it's very difficult for this one individual to carry your team to absolute victory. Notice in the PMLO initial characterization in it of itself, we discussed that most teams who are picking in draft are going to be worse off teams who didn't do well. Which means even if you get LeBron and then he plays extremely well, regardless of the concerns provided in my first by my first two speakers about his age, about his motivations, which they completely try to ignore by saying, oh, but it won't happen. I don't know why, because they completely ignored the analysis that we give you at Ritu and Driven. But okay, even if we buy that and LeBron plays absolutely great, the probability of you likely to win if you don't have a great team around him because it's a team sport, the entire narrative around your team then becomes that you did not win even with LeBron James. Then the media and fans devour your entire existence by saying that you probably played with the greatest of all time, and yet the other players or the coaching staff or the general management wasn't good enough to get a win. You notice how much extra pressure it is to play with such players now. You notice why every LeBron teammate has to go with a tag that if you don't win with him, you probably couldn't have won ever, hence you're not good enough. These are the kinds of pressure that come with when a mega superstar is in your locker room. These are the kind of narratives that you have to deal with from media and fans if you don't live up to the expectations associated with this person. And these are the kinds of narratives with this general manager will also have to live up to. They'll You as an individual are going to be labeled as someone who did not have in him to create a team around probably the greatest of all time as well to not win. Notice in any sport it's more like it's a 50-50 chance of you winning or not. And considering LeBron's age and whatever factors we discuss right now, the in most situations winning is very difficult. It's not in your hand many times. You have multiple different factors acting into it. So as an individual who has to make this choice right now, I am unsure as to why in a team where I don't can't guarantee a win with LeBron, why would I want to carry this status along with me of the fact that I, as a general manager, couldn't create a team around LeBron James capable of winning. This is the tag down that this individual, this general manager would have to live, and I wouldn't want to make that active choice for myself, because that is something that will define my legacy as a manager in future as well. Forget LeBron's legacy. I have to decide for my legacy. Will I get a job in future? Because future teams would now consider me irrelevant because I got to have LeBron James and still didn't win. That's the cost you have to live with. That's the kind of media narrative that will surround you and your players in the team right now. So which means the players in your team right now would be wary of leaving, would want to leave where they can play without that pressure. Second panel, I think the future cost that they completely try to ignore. Because it's well established in this debate that probably LeBron won't stay for a longer period of time. He retires, he leaves, whatever. Which means the entire fan base connect or the social fan capital you generated out of that was majorly because of established connect with LeBron James. So once LeBron James leaves, there's a large disconnect between your fans and you. Why? Because these fans didn't love you for how your team played. What was your team identity? What was your team culture? These players loved their greatest player, LeBron James, and they supported him. They supported any team he would have played for. Which means once LeBron has left, you are left with this large vacuum that you have to deal with. You have a general disconnect with your fans, and this now affects all the future prospects of your team. You don't know how to navigate from this because at one moment you had everything, now you don't even have a substantial fan base. How are you going to deal with that switch? You're making your job difficult by bringing in LeBron James. Let's deal with PR because they try to paint it as an exclusive benefit. First of all, we've already told you that it's not like no PR is bad PR. We've already told you what kinds of narratives start surrounding you, how everything your team does now start becoming about this father-son duo. But and it brings all the problem in your locker rooms, affects your game. But even if you don't want to buy it, even if you get the PR incentives and the economic incentives and short term on their side of the house, notice most of this PR was because LeBron was bringing in the views every 100 to 100 million followers of him. Once they leave, this large PR also leaves, which means you now have a vacuum in terms of funds as well to fill. You don't know how you're going to fill that vacuum. You don't know in future how you're going to sustain that, because once you have revenue, your costs, you try to match them as well. You elevate your standards to match the kind of revenue you're getting, but now your revenue suddenly goes down and you don't know how to deal with all of this in future. You don't know, okay, probably for 2 years you'll make a profit. What after the third year, once you won't have this individual, how will you be able to generate similar level of numbers? How will you able to pay out salaries or contracts that you promised based upon existing revenues? How will you deal with this financial void on your books? This long-term cost is something that have been pushing from first two speeches, but they haven't dealt with so far. Then this last idea that they had, oh, but because you can't guarantee a pick, yes, I can't guarantee that you have a Victor Wembanyama phenom this time, but as a general manager, my job is to be paid that I maximize the chance of winning from that draft. Draft is not just about win now, draft is about maximizing my future probability. So the counterfactual, which they say doesn't exist on our side, it does. The counterfactual is simple. You don't bet on Bronny, who has all the metrics of not being so great. You bet on a player who has greater chance of developing a better career. In short term, I don't know how likely their best case scenario is on which they have been harping about. But in the long term, we have proven you certainly that you won't get these benefits and you have extreme costs to deal with, which they never even choose to engage with. On our side, if I bet on a player and create a winning culture, I'm more likely to form a sustainable basketball team. And as an individual myself, I won't have to live with the regrets of not winning. I won't be bludgeoned in media as someone who got LeBron and still didn't win. As a general manager, I wouldn't want to fuck my own career over. Very proud to oppose.
I thank the speaker for the fine speech. Opposition replies, speaker, here.
Yep, 30 seconds. Right, sorry about that. Cool. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. One. Notice how government's case is reliant on one, LeBron James somehow bringing people to the team to victory, two, Bronny being an average player at best, three, on the fact that people will care that much in more than 2 years that they're going to stay with the team even after LeBron James leaves, right? Notice how unintuitive it is and how best case it is, because none of these things are taken to factors that have been brought up by our team multiple times, right? One, we've already told you how in terms of LeBron James, they have like biological reasons in terms of being old, in terms of like not having the incentive to want to continue this, right? The response is just that, oh, people will want to win because it's a sport, right? I'm unsure as to why that's true. I'm unsure as to anything that exists like that, right? We've already told you how it's not just that, it's also like load balancing and things like that, which are actual NBA practices in which they'll have to sit out of games, right? Which means you won't have people who necessarily like are going to support your team when you don't have LeBron James. Garvit mentions this, I mentioned this. I'm unsure as to how they're able to deal with this, right? Because they never tell you an actual mechanism of how they're going to somehow be good enough to actually take you like take the team to some level of like to take the team to win a championship, right? Because notice the amount of investment needed. So for all those reasons, we think that LeBron James itself is out. To in terms of Bronny itself, notice that the reason for why Bronny somehow is the most like best guaranteed player is by saying that he's dealt with PR, but they conveniently ignore the issues of like the health, ignore the issues of health when they themselves say that one of the most key important things is that you probably have to play like 82 games in the season, right? I'm unsure as to how exactly his health is going to sustain that. They never engage with that, right? Three, on the in this idea of like short term versus long term, one, notice that the short term itself is very best case, and this is even in that best case, we're able to tell you how you're still going to have long-term harms, right? How does this actually manifest? One, we tell you how exactly these finances and the PR that you get, the finances you get from the PR are not sustainable, right? Because they themselves claim that the narrative that is going to exist is around the father-son duo, but they never able to tell you how this narrative is going to, which narrative is going to fill the vacuum when LeBron James and Bronny eventually leave, right? Because their best case is that, it's a rookie contract. If Bronny doesn't contribute, he also leaves. So I'm unsure as to how exactly any of this is going to happen, right? Even if it does happen, they're never able to deal with the vacuum itself. Two, in terms of this idea, in terms of the team chemistry and the people in the team itself, they're never able to tell you how exactly the team itself is going to have like a coherent sense when we already tell you that they're going to face media issues, the narratives that Garvit discussed in terms of like you not being able to play even when you have the best player in the league, which is already mentioned by the DPM and the whip, which means that I'm unsure as to how exactly you're going to live up to expectations. So this is something that isn't an added burden, especially since they already say that the NBA is a pretty bad environment to like play in, right? Three, in terms of this idea of like, because of the fact that team dynamic doesn't exist, you're probably going to lose the players that you already do have, right? Notice that that's probably the worst harm that you can have as a general manager, especially since you want this team to continue, you want this team to like live past 2 years, right? So I'm unsure as to how exactly any of the any of these harms are actually dealt with, because they're never able to tell us how exactly they're actually doing any of this, right? Two, so because of that, we think in terms of the short term, we're able to tell you that even if we take their best case, we're able to prove how exactly this is going to harm the incentives of the general manager and harm the general manager themselves, right? Two, in terms of the short term itself, we're able to tell you how exactly it's not the best pick, because as a general manager, your incentive is to maximize your chances, and you're unsure as to exactly how Bronny is going to actually play and LeBron is actually going to contribute to the team, right? So on the comparative, their side is uncertain at best, and on our side, we're able to tell you in certainty how exactly you're going to have harms, right? For all those reasons, couldn't be prouder to oppose.
I thank the speaker for that fine speech. Government reply, speaker, here.
Am I audible?
Yep, you're audible.
Okay. I will be beginning in 3, 2, 1. The general manager is not the coach. He does not, and he's not the chief psychologist of the team. He does not give a shit about your team's psychology. He does not give a shit about your team statistics or skills and tactics. He cares about the revenue that the team can produce. He cares about the fan base that he can build. He cares about the team presence in the social, in the media, in the broadcast as well. These are the things, these are the metrics that you need to win this debate on. I think you're arguing on the perspective of, oh my god, do you play beautiful tiki-taka basketball? I don't know. I don't think that that's really the comparative here to begin with. But before I do anything else in this reply speech, I will have to unfortunately engage with the 5 minutes worth of new content that they brought at third opposition speech, right? They talked about how LeBron didn't win much with, sorry, how Lakers did not win much with LeBron and how that's a bad thing. Panel, Lakers had the worst record in franchise history in the NBA before LeBron came in. Secondly, LeBron quite literally carried Lakers to their first NBA title in 10 years. Empirically untrue that LeBron was inconclusive. But secondly, what if you don't win with LeBron? Like the people will say, "Oh my God, you couldn't even win with LeBron. What the hell? What now?" First of all, if you're already a small team, I don't think the expectation like this is gonna really impact you much. But secondly, the likelihood of you not winning with LeBron is so low. He has won a championship with every single team that he has played for, not only the Lakers but like the 5 or so other teams that he has played for as well. Why won't that happen here? Even at our worst case, even if you don't win the goddamn championship, I think you will improve significantly. You will be in the competition. You will be in the playoffs or whatever knockouts there are in the NBA, and that sort of exposure is going to be good as well. I think that's just like unfair engagement at their side of the house as well. But then there's, oh my god, long term success that doesn't come. I am sorry, even if for the next 2 years you can generate 10 times the amount of revenue that you were previously generating. You can have 10 times the amount of fans and attendance in your stadium. You can have 10 times the amount of channels showing your games. You can have 10 times the amount of tickets and merchandise that you're selling. That in and of itself is a long-term benefit, because that money is going to be spent in your training facilities, in the draft picks for the next 5 years. That's a lot of money. They're not going to eat that up. That's the money you're going to spend in paying better players. That's the money you're going to spend in getting better coaches. I'm sorry, that is long-term benefit. Even if you're generating high revenues for only the next 2 years, that's going to happen to begin with as well. But secondly, if LeBron puts your team on the map, people are going to more likely to watch it in the long term as well. Why? Because A, the legacy that LeBron has played for your team. B, the fact that LeBron has trained with your team means that your team is just objectively better off tactically in the future. C, the experience of playing with LeBron and making it to the out rounds or whatever knockouts or even the fucking finals of the NBA, I don't know how that works, are also long-term benefits, because it A, puts you on the map, B, gives you essential experience that you need to succeed in the long term as well. That happens exclusively at our side of the house as well. But oh my god, the vacuum after he leaves. Are you goddamn stupid? What vacuum are you talking about? These people have had no support before as well. They won't have any support afterwards at your best, by the way. I posit you that they will, because of the reasons that I've given you and the reasons we've given you before. But even if they don't, it's just inexclusive. And general managers are not stupid. They're not just sitting there imagining that after LeBron James leaves, they will be able to retain all the players. They know that all the fans, they know a lot of the fans and a lot of the attention will go away. They're going to plan for that. I don't know why that doesn't happen. But this idea that oh my god, what are LeBron James incentives, right? I posit to you that, panel, very simply, LeBron James is the goat of the game and he wants to go out with a bang, right? He is literally the best player that the NBA has ever seen. He does not want to go out in an underwhelming season and an underwhelming team. He wants to actively perform. He will do everything which is within his humane power to do that. But also, secondly, he has this incentive to do this with his son as well. Even if he has a selfish incentive to help his son, then I think he has a selfish incentive to win with his son, to put his son on the map as well. I don't know why that doesn't happen at our side of the house as well, right? I think that then on all metrics, we win this debate. You give you exclusive impact in terms of the fan base that you're going to get, in terms of the money that you're going to get, and most importantly, the simple fact that this is an actor debate, and for the actor, the general manager, the most important thing is the kind of money that you can make and the fact that you can put your team on the map. I think then even on their best, we win this debate. Even at their worst, we win this debate. Vote side. Love.
I thank the speaker for that very fine speech. With this, we come to an end of this debate. I would request the speakers to please leave the room for the judges so that we can submit the ballots and share the speaker scores. Thank you so much for the debate and all the best for the results.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, just to confirm, there's no OA or anything. You just find out later.
Yeah, no OA. Results will be announced for all the rooms in the auditorium on the Discord maybe.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Also, Harsh, can you please tell me the vetoes of both the teams? Okay, great. Pratham, can you please leave the room? Okay. Great. Joanna, do you have your verdict ready? Yeah, that works. Yeah, thank you.
Can I just get a few minutes more? Just
Yeah,